Our intro. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Our monthly Sage 300 CRE webinar topic is multi-entity system accounting. So the purpose of today's webinar will be to give you a high-level overview of some of the great enhancements and additional modules that are available to Sage 300 CRE users. So whether you're a current user of Sage 300 CRE or if you're considering an upgrade to 300, we're hoping to give you some insight on some of the benefits that you may not currently be taking advantage of. Excuse me. So lastly, this webinar should also serve as sort of an open forum for any questions that you might have for us, mainly Seth here, our presenter. In regards to implementing or utilizing Sage 300 CRE to its fullest, it doesn't necessarily need to be any specific thing that we talked about today. So bring your questions to the end of the presentation. And in a few minutes, I'll bring in our longtime resource for Sage 300 CRE technical support, certified consultant Seth Myers. Seth Myers has been working with Sage 300 CRE Timberline for more than 20 years. Before coming to TAG, Seth worked in the CRE software division at Sage. I'm going to go ahead and just mute real quick some folks so that we get rid of some of the background noise. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so as a senior support analyst, he earned multiple customer service awards. He wrote over 20 knowledge-based articles and training documents. He teaches software concepts from math to network, hardware configurations, installations, to accounting workflows and best practices. We're really lucky to have him on our team. So I'll go over just a couple of quick features, and then I'll hand it over to Seth for some in-depth discussion of some of the capabilities of Sage 300 CRE. So whether you're a service contractor, property manager, a developer, specialty sub, or perhaps you're an organization that does it all, Sage 300 CRE will eliminate double entry and manual work involved with data flowing through all the various companies in one single entity, streamlining operations and allowing you to see the full picture and financial health of the organization. We will quickly touch on service management, property management, and mobile projects. Then Seth will show you the benefits of MyAssistant, Office Connector, intercompany transactions, and consolidated financial statements in Sage 300 CRE. Okay, so service management simplifies service call dispatching, field technician management, and billing. You're able to see the status of any service call, including the time the call is scheduled, the type of service to be performed, and the technician assigned to perform the service. Property management features a unique data structure that puts the lease document at the heart of the software, making it flexible enough to accommodate virtually any lease agreement, including multiple leases per tenant, multiple units per lease, and multiple tenants per lease. And mobility within Sage 300 CRE has been quite a push in recent years. And now with mobile projects, you have the capability to capture daily field reports and give field teams access to RFIs. The best part about this application is that you receive a free license for 1 year if you own a project management license. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Seth to talk about how Sage 300 CRE handles consolidated financial reporting, as well as intercompany transactions. And then he'll also be covering MyAssistant Office Connector with some time for question and answer. So go ahead, Seth.
All right, thank you for the intro. So the discussion regarding intercompany transactions / setup, as well as consolidated financials, go hand in hand. In order to do intercompany transactions, generally speaking, we usually see people setting up multiple departments so that they can say, hey, I've got one main company. I've got different divisions that I want to track costs and different kinds of entries to. And then I want to be able to have one of those divisions bill out to another division, have that parent division pay out. So essentially the intercompany receivable and payable. By doing that, then that combined with the logic of using prefixes, we're able to create consolidated financials either at the parent level, which means essentially lumping all of those different departments together, or you can create financial statements at each of the division levels. And when you create those financial statements at the division levels, you'll see those intercompany transactions flowing back and forth. The great part about the intercompanies is once we set it up in your data system, it's live in the sense that it does its own transactions. By that I mean you would typically put a job prefix over on your job setup for general ledger, and then based on that prefix, for example, like a 10-01 as say an estimating department and 10-02 as maybe a marketing department. Then when you create transactions to that job for that particular prefix, it says, hey, I'm paying out of one account that's set up at my prefix 1001, for example, and I'm paying it onto a job that goes to a 1002. So in the background for you, it's creating those transactions. And as you notice on this screen, there's an intercompany payable and receivable base account, and that's set up on the company. So it says, hey, go use, in our case, like this one, account 2007 is my payable, and the 1205 is my receivable. We usually encourage people, if you're going to start using the intercompany transactions, to create a specific account just for those intercompany payable and receivable, rather than using your default AP and default AR account. That way, when you're reconciling and trying to track backwards, you can quickly see at a glance, hey, here's all my invoices, here's the vendors or customers, and if I think there's something wrong, I can go dig further into that, versus if I use my normal accounts payable or normal accounts receivable, it makes it real hard to parse that data out. So as you can see in here, we would normally set up our different company, like this one's the company 10 for Timberline Construction. We put in all the normal company settings like your fiscal periods and all that. Depending on your data folder, you can have different fiscal ends. And then at that general information tab, we would put in each of the payable and receivables. Now, I have had some companies where they create separate payable or receivables for each of their companies. That way they can more easily track backwards if they want to try and reconcile, but it's not a requirement. Leilani, can you go to the next slide for me? Okay. So again, same logic. Once you get done with all those transactions at each month, you're going to typically run your normal balance sheets and P&Ls. And your P&Ls, depending on how you've created them in Financial Statement Designer, may lump everything together. So for example, here in this middle screenshot where it says income statement, see expenses as the 6100 account for expenses under parts. That's lumped together for all of your prefixes. And then what you could do is you could set up separate individual statements where you say, hey, I need to see for company 1001, what's its expenses? And I want to see 1002's expenses. And you just kind of drill down from one company to another. So you have a lot of flexibility. The thing that's nice about it is you may have a company where you might have, say, 10 different divisions, but maybe 2 or 3 of those divisions are similar enough in style of work that you want to lump those together. And on this left window here where we see select prefix group, you could actually create your own custom prefix groups where it's lumping those different prefixes together. So you can say, hey, division 2 and 3 are similar, I'll lump those together, but division 4 I want to see separate, and division 5 I want to see separate. So you have a lot of flexibility when you're running your reports. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so then the other thing that ties in nicely with this is the idea of MyAssistant. MyAssistant is a program that you install on your server, and essentially it is an automated assistant for you. And the logic is that it can, based on different schedules that you create and different tests that you're going to create, it will send out emails to anybody that you want to send. It could be inside your office, could be outside your office, or could be both. And then you can send out reports. And so the logic is, maybe you have a weekly report that you want generated. You could, for example, say, hey, send out my cost report for XYZ jobs in this division and send it to their applicable project managers. Or you could say, hey, I need to send out a vendor report to my AP clerk every week so they know which jobs I want to send or cut checks for. So in combination with the idea of both your Intercompany, as well as setting up different prefixes. You could utilize MyAssistant to email information based on those divisions. And then in a less granular approach, you could use MyAssistant to email anything. So for example, if you want to email all of your subcontractors 30 days before their insurance expires and say, hey, 30 days from now your insurance expires, I need all your new certs. And then you can send them any PDFs or Word docs or Excel docs that you normally would email to that person. Great thing about it is you can send reports, you can send as attachments, you can send spreadsheets, you can send PDF files, any number of types of documents. The only limitation really with MyAssistant is the recipient's email. And by that I mean, if you send somebody an email and your attachment's 20 meg, it might bounce back as undeliverable. Well, MyAssistant will still send it regardless. So if you have 10 recipients and 9 out of the 10 can take a 20 meg file, then it'll send it for sure. Okay, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so when you buy MyAssistant, it comes preloaded with different pre-built tasks based on the modules that you've purchased and licensed. So in our case here, the screenshot shows pretty much all the modules. But in, for example, project management, there's certain reports that you can send out. In job costs, there's certain reports you can send out, again, based on different schedules or criteria. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. So if we look at AP, for example, in AP, you'll notice that I just grabbed a few of the reports, but there's one that says invoices posted to a closed job, which could be beneficial because you don't want to start cutting out invoices for jobs that really shouldn't be having any costs associated. Maybe they're no longer in your WIP reports. So you can activate this task, give it a schedule and say, hey, run this daily, for example, and it'll send out a list to you. Now, the common question I get is, hey, if I don't have any invoices posted to a closed job, do I get just a blank email? No, if it can't meet any criteria for the test, it just doesn't send the emails. So your email does not get clogged up with a bunch of empty emails or junk. Another one down below, the lien waivers, that's pretty common. So that's looking at your lien waiver dates and whether or not they've been marked as received. So if you guys are tracking the lien waivers and compliance items in order to cut checks, this is one of them that I see people activate pretty regularly. Job cost over on the right side, for example, one of them that I see a lot nowadays is change orders that have been denied because as we all know, change orders is how we make money on a job. So if you estimate your job with a 2 to 3% profit margin, you want to push as many change orders as you can. So when you activate this task, it will then send, based on whoever you declare, it'll send an email to them in whatever schedule and say, hey, here's all the change orders and jobs that have been marked as denied in your system. So again, this is based on you going into the change order and literally marking the status as denied. Obviously, you can also have other reports sent out based on different statuses. So if you say, hey, I want to see all the change orders that are marked as pending, we can create another condition or a task for that and then email out as well. So these are just some examples. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. The last topic to talk about today is Office Connector. Office Connector is, in very easy terms, it's a Excel plugin that winds up pulling data out of your Sage database, and it can also write data back to your Sage database. So Office Connector is made up of 4 modules, essentially. You have Office Connector Query, Write, Import, and Financials. The Office Connector Query, that's how we get data out of your system. So a lot of people nowadays, they don't want to run Crystal reports or normal report designer reports in Sage. They just want to pull something into Excel and create their own pivot tables and create their own graphs. So what Query does is it lets you very quickly create a very basic query or an advanced one, pull data out based on criteria, and then literally it's in Excel and you can do whatever you want. So for example, if you say, hey, I want to see all of my costs for XYZ job, whatever it is, and I want it in a certain date range, you can make the query pull all that data based on all that criteria for you. Office Connector Write gives you the ability to write data back to Sage. But the data it's writing is from what they call writable fields in Sage. So if you think of setting up job costs and you go in and put an address in, it's not based on a transaction. It's just literally you going into the screen and typing the value. So anything that's not transaction based, you use Office Connector Write for. So things like updating addresses on a vendor, or maybe update the project manager on a job field, or maybe you update an employee's address or maybe their exemptions number. So that's how you can use the write, because we're not really creating a transaction, we're just writing values back. Office Connector import, that's the one that we can use to create transactions. So for example, if you go into job cost and you go to the tools menu, you can import direct costs, you can import estimates, you can create Excel templates using this Office Connector wizard then that will allow you to import all those values. It also does give you the ability to import some things that you can't normally import into Timberline. So for example, in job cost, if you guys use the project, the miscellaneous worksheets to push data in and somebody's manually typing that, there is no import miscellaneous worksheets in job cost, but Office Connector does have that. So you can create templates as elaborate as you want and create a column where you're pushing values back into the miscellaneous worksheets field and then push a button and it imports instantly. And because it's an import, it has a transaction date that you can then range on for job reports. And it also has other conditions that you can pass through, like custom descriptions and all that kind of stuff. So that's the import. The financials, the last part of Office Connector, is where basically most people want to be able to run their financial statements like the P&L or the balance sheet, and they want to get it into Excel. Well, what this does is this allows you to literally pull the data out of Sage and it creates the financial in Excel format for you. There's no saving as a PDF or saving as a text and then trying to import stuff into Excel. It literally is in the format of a financial statement. They do have the financial statements that work for prefixed companies or non-prefixed. And then the other really amazing, cool thing about the financials is there's what's called drill down. So if you're familiar with inquiries in Sage, you'll remember how if you go into an inquiry and you double click on a value, it drills down into the next level of detail. Well, the cool part about the financials is there's a little symbol to the right of each cell. And when you double click on that cell, it drills down into the values. So you can create a financial statement, say, hey, I need to go analyze my expenses for job costs, my cost of goods sold for material and subs. I see the number for material. Gee, that seems kind of high. I can double click on the number, opens up another tab in that same spreadsheet, and it populates all the data from Sage for me that shows all those values. So it's a very quick way of getting information. Okay, so when you look at your computer, you've probably seen a little golden yellow colored icon on your desktop. It says Office Connector Launchpad, and that's what we see here. So when you first open the Launchpad, you're going to have pre-built tabs. And then as you license different plugins, like the financials or the imports, or even write, then you get additional tabs. So on my case here, I did a screenshot. We have the welcome one, which is just the normal welcome. Then you have the starter one that shows all the starter templates that they send you that you can play with. Then under the reports tab, you have all their custom built reports. Those are all based on different applications. Again, it's all dependent on the modules you've purchased. So if you have, say, job costs and accounts payable, but you don't have payroll, then the payroll reports don't show on the list. Then you also get the import tab if you purchase the import, and that has certain imports that are pre-built for you, and they're based on the same structure as the import in those modules, meaning AP, import invoices, or job cost, import estimates. So one of the questions I usually get from somebody is, well, if I can import it in job costs or I can import it in AP, why would I want to buy another program that does that for me? The reason is because it's already formatted for you. You don't have to go through the help files and try and figure out how to format everything, change date formats, change number formats, all that stuff. It's pre-built for you. You just type in the values, hit a button, and it's done. The financials tab, that's the one we were just talking about. You can look at your different financial statements and have drill down. And then you'll notice that there's a tab called recurring GL entries. What I did here was essentially I created just a basic template for importing GL entries. And what I did is I created another tab on my Launchpad here, and I called it recurring GL entries. You could call it anything you want. The logic for showing this to you was that you could create your own custom imports and templates and all that kind of stuff. Put them all in one tab that says, you know, company templates or customized templates, and they're all housed in one spot. So it's easy to find that information. And then the last tab, of course, is the tutorials. Office Connector Event 1 knowledge base is just like Sage's, where a lot of times they'll have step-by-step processes you can go through. The cool part about this tutorials is they have YouTube videos. So if you want to see the basics on how to create a query, they have a YouTube video for it. And then obviously if you have questions, you can always call us and we can either help build out more of them for you or customize ones that you may or may not already have. Okay, next slide. So again, kind of on the pre-built templates line on this reports tab, you'll notice there's a whole slew of them. There's the AR ones, AP, job cost, PM if you have property management. And then down below it has the write ones. You'll notice, for example, it says write GL budget or write JC work in process or progress, I mean. So those write ones are updating values in your database. And then obviously over on the import tab, we have different kinds of imports that we can do as well for primarily AP, AR, GL, and job cost. I've only had a few people use the PM ones. And then on the financials, I mentioned there was the idea of creating financials with drill down or financials at the company level or prefix level if you wanted to. Okay, and next slide. Any questions at this point for what we've talked about today? And if all else fails, if you do have questions later on, you can definitely feel free to email Leilani and she'll be able to forward those over and then I can send you guys responses as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Seth. We will be here every third week of the month, so we'll see you guys back in March. If you have any topics that you'd like to discuss, I think we had one request to talk about construction payroll in 300. So if there are any other requests on topics that you'd like covered, please let us know. Any questions, feel free to email those in as well. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you.